Did you know that Zoro's entire backstory was just 7 pages in the manga? Zoro losing to Kuwena, Kuwena losing to boobs, Zoro losing to Kuwena again, and Kuwena losing to stairs. We get all that in just 7 pages. And pretty much besides that, we have little to no info on Zoro's backstory until very recently in the Wano arc. But with this additional info that we've gotten, it's starting to seem very likely that Zoro not only has connections to Wano, but also to the Shimotsuki clan. So today, we'll be breaking down everything we know about Zoro's backstory, the differences between the anime and manga, the info we've gotten from SBS's, what it could mean for his role in Wano in the future of the story, and at the very end we'll be discussing the new info we learned in One Piece chapter 1023, but everything else is manga spoiler free. There'll be timestamps below for your convenience, and also make sure you subscribe and join the King Pirates crew to keep up with videos like this one. But anyways, let's get into Zoro's backstory, which despite being just 7 pages has a lot of information. But the first thing we have to do is separate the differences between the anime and the manga. And honestly, overall, it's really not that different. Mostly the anime just added some training montages to stretch the episode out. But the one major difference we have to point out was that in the anime, Zoro was coming from another village to challenge the dojo. There was this specific scene where Zoro is looking out into the distance with his arm crossed like he was about to challenge the Elite Four. But in reality, in the manga, Zoro is actually from that village. The first glimpse of the flashback is simply him getting his ass beat by Kuwena, and there was never this scene with him challenging the dojo. Now that might seem like a minor point, but it's actually very important because the village that Zoro is from is called the Shimotsuki village. More on that in a little bit. The rest of the Zoro flashback is exactly what you remembered. Zoro loses, Kuwena falls down some steps, and Zoro goes on to chase his dream. And besides that, the only other time we really get some info on his childhood and backstory was in his fight against Da's Bones. In that fight, Zoro struggled because he had to figure out a way to cut steel to defeat Da's Bones, and in this moment of desperation, he actually thinks back to Koshiro, Kuwena's father. Now, although this made sense because Koshiro was Zoro's sensei and taught him about swordsmanship, I still found it kind of surprising because he just kind of seemed like this classic side character shonen sensei who was kind of a terrible father. Like, this man straight up told his daughter that she couldn't be anything great because she was a woman. Not a great look for a guy Koshiro. But as it turns out, although he might not be a great dad, he was actually a pretty good sensei. In Zoro's flashback, we actually see Koshiro giving him some great wisdom, showing him that the control of one sword was the answer to be able to cut anything. And by thinking back to that moment with Koshiro, Zoro figured out a breathing technique that ended up cutting steel and defeating Da's Bones. Now, this breathing technique is also very interesting because some people argue that it was Zoro actually using haki pre-time skip. I think that's a very credible argument, but at the very least, it was a very advanced technique that Koshiro taught Zoro, showing that Koshiro was not just your average Andy. And well, as we would later find out in Wano, Koshiro and the Shimotsuki village were definitely not just basic things to forget about. Now, some of you might be confused as to what I'm talking about, whether you're reading the manga or watching the anime, because this next bit of information actually came from an SBS. Honestly, it's still kind of shocking to me that Oda just revealed this in SBS, but it's his story, I guess. In SBS volume 96, Oda nonchalantly revealed that Koshiro is the son of the legendary swordsmith Shimotsuki Kozaburo. Yeah, the guy that made Emma, that's Koshiro's dad, making him Kuwena's grandfather. And not only that, but Oda also broke down the entire story of Shimotsuki Kozaburo in that SBS. Kozaburo had left Wano 55 years ago and eventually settled down in the East Blue, founding the Shimotsuki village. Oda even confirmed that the old geezer that taught Zoro Tsunachi was in fact Shimotsuki Kozaburo as well. So with that information, we have at the very least a direct connection of Zoro's village to Wano. And honestly, while I'm still kind of shocked that Oda revealed this in the SBS, this was kind of expected. Throughout the Wano arc, we've gotten some hints like Zoro knowing about Tsunachi, which is a popular Wano battle cry. Also the fact that Zoro's village was called the Shimotsuki village, while the Shimotsuki clan was a major clan in Wano. Plus the fact that Shimotsuki Kozaburo also made the Wado Ichimonji, this confirmation was coming sooner or later. But what takes this a step further and makes it even more interesting is Zoro's lineage and whether or not he is a Shimotsuki himself. And based off the concrete info right now, it's kinda up in the air. Sure, Zoro is from the Shimotsuki village that has ties to Wano, but not everybody from that village is a Shimotsuki. After all, in the SBS, it was noted that some locals were saved from bandits, so there are definitely some people native to the East Blue in the Shimotsuki village. On the other hand, it's definitely possible that Zoro is a Shimotsuki descendant from somebody that Kozaburo brought with him. With the concrete info we have right now, there is no right answer, which is why we have to theorize. Hey YouTube, Joy Boy here. Okay, we're not gonna do that, but we are gonna talk about Zoro's other connection to Wano, which is Ryuma. Back in Thriller Bark, Zoro defeated the zombie corpse of Ryuma, a legendary swordsman from Wano, and was able to get Shusui. But because of that, he got into a lot of trouble when he got to Wano. As it turns out, Ryuma is not just some legendary swordsman from Wano, he's like their GOAT. Don't get me wrong, a lot of people love Kozuki Oden, but you still got a lot of swordsmen saying that Ryuma's 6 rings against that dragon were better. But GOAT discussion aside, what's really interesting about Ryuma is that his name is Shimotsuki Ryuma. Also, he looks like this. So obviously with Ryuma, it seems like Oda is hinting even more about Zoro's connection with the Shimotsuki clan. A lot of people have even said that this connection between Zoro and Ryuma is a foreshadowing of Zoro killing Kaido, but we'll save that for another video. But yeah, so far in Wano, Zoro has kind of had this little plot line because of Ryuma, and because of that, he's learned a lot more about Ryuma's story, and I don't think this plot line is done. Zoro did say himself that he wishes to visit Ryuma's grave later on. Could that be the moment where Zoro's Shimotsuki lineage is revealed and we find out more about his backstory? Possibly, especially when we look at all the other Shimotsuki connections to Zoro. First off, the person Zoro spent the most time with and had the strongest relationship with in Wano was Shimotsuki Yasuie. The word Shimotsuki itself is also Old Japanese for the month of November, and Zoro just happens to be born in November. And then there's Shimotsuki Ushimaru, the only other daimyo that really got any focus because he was the companion of Onimaru the Fox. Now we don't know exactly what Ushimaru looks like, but from his body build and the back of his head that we've seen, a lot of people are saying that he looks eerily similar to Zoro. And overall, there seems to be a lot of different things pointing to Zoro being a Shimotsuki, but will that be a good thing, and how is that gonna impact his story? Personally, I'm not mad at the idea of Zoro being a Shimotsuki. I don't think it takes away from his accomplishments at all. After all, Luffy is from one crazy ass family. But I do think we need a proper explanation to his backstory, because one important thing to point out is that Zoro already has a surname. He's Roronoa Zoro. So if he turns out to be a Shimotsuki, does that mean his mom was a Shimotsuki, or was he an orphan of some sort? We need some answers. And as for the future of his story, I don't really think it changes much for him. If anything, we get a better understanding of Zoro's backstory and character. If he is a Shimotsuki, I think the people of Wano will treat him better, but I kinda expect that to happen anyways based off his own feats from this war. Other than that, I don't really see any other instances where this really plays a big role. Maybe it comes up in his future interactions with Mihawk, because Mihawk is the strongest swordsman. He might know something about Wano's history, and that could lead to a different conversation. Maybe they've even talked about it during the time skip already, but besides Mihawk, I think maybe the final war is the only other instance where this could become relevant. Wano has a lot of history behind it. It was definitely connected to the ancient kingdom in some way, and with the Shimotsuki clan being such a prominent clan, Zoro could get tied in that way. But beyond that, I don't see any way that this changes Zoro's future. And before I talk about the stuff we learned in chapter 1023, I want to know your thoughts on Zoro being a Shimotsuki. Do you think it will happen? Would you like it if it happened? Let me know in the comments. But from this point forward, there will be manga spoilers for chapter 1023, so if you're not yet caught up, go watch this. It's spoiler free. But yeah, 1023 was a terrific chapter. We got some major information, and it was really the reason I got inspired to talk about this again. In this chapter, we found out that the two people that look like Zoro, Ushimaru and Ryuma, are directly related. And honestly, I think with this confirmation and how many other different connections to Shimotsuki Zoro has had, it kind of pretty much confirms that he is gonna be related to the Shimotsuki clan in one way or another. Like I mentioned earlier, there's still a lot of explaining to do. I think the Roronoa name is still important. He's not just gonna become Shimotsuki Zoro, but this new information about Ryuma and Ushimaru makes me pretty much believe that Zoro is a Shimotsuki. What's even more interesting though is that we finally get some hints about Zoro's eye, because Ryuma was also a one-eyed swordsman. Now in the picture of Ryuma I showed earlier, he does have both of his eyes, but Oda could easily explain it as an earlier draft or something like that. But I'm now very curious at what this could mean. Is Zoro's eye actually like a power-up? If you watch my videos, I've always been on the other side. I just thought that Zoro's eye was like a scar from Mihawk, or if anything, just some symbolism because Rayleigh also has that scar on his eye. And maybe it's still just symbolism to connect Zoro and Ryuma, but there's definitely a stronger case that it does have some power to it. The fact that Zoro got it during the time skip while he was training with Mihawk kind of backs that up as well. And Zoro having one eye is also something Oda planned for a long time. In a very early interview, Oda had already said he was planning on making Zoro a one-eyed character. So clearly it's something important, and at this point I probably lean towards it being more than just symbolism. But honestly, I don't have a good guess, so let me know yours in the comments. Whoa, that's a good looking video right there. You gotta check that video out.